welcome to another episode of the Comstock channel. My name is Brianne Hendrickson, and I have Dan with us today. Welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Glad to have you back on, which means it's kind of time for you to shine with your wizardry report time.
Let my light shine.
Yeah. But it looks like traders kind of spent today and probably likely tomorrow for the Thursday October crop report and WASDE report. Balance sheets coming out and ending stocks, which is why we have you on.
Yeah.
You don't sound excited.
Well, it's always a big guessing game ahead of a WASDE report, and the October reports are kind of famous for having some surprises. And the reason is that the yield estimates that go into the previous reports are mostly field checks and some surveys. But with the October reports, there's the surveys and the field checks and the actual harvest results for the first time. And sometimes that's how we can get some little surprises in the yields for October compared to September.
What do those tell you about the potential for marketing moving surprises when those numbers do come out on Thursday?
Well, Brianne, the best way to do that is I've sent you a chart. It shows some history of yields for corn. Let's go with corn first. Now, this is from R.J. O'Brien. That's the brokerage firm that we clear through, and they do some excellent research and put together some really good graphics. And this is actually a history of both corn yields and corn production. The production in billion bushels is on the left-hand scale, and those are the vertical bars. And then they also put the yield, the green line bouncing up and down, are the yields over time, going all the way back to 1989. And so, referring specifically to the October report due on Thursday at 11 a.m., first look at the USDA September estimate for corn yield was 173.8 bushels per acre. So, what's the average trade guesstimate for Thursday? It comes in at 173.6. In other words, just 0.2 of a bushel decline from September to October. But what I find interesting is the range of those estimates. It's surprisingly wide. The range of estimates, some of them are as low as 171.5. That's the low end. And the high one is 175.5. So, I mean, that's a 4 bushel range among the 20 firms that get surveyed for these services, and that's an unusually wide range, and it shows the wide variation in the scattered anecdotal yield reports that everybody is getting from farmers. Oh, the RJO, one more thing, the RJO estimate, I put a little circle around it there. Their estimate is 174. So RJO is among those who actually think the yield this Thursday is going to be up just a little bit from the September estimate.
How is history going to help stack the odds for correctly guessing which way surprises might come and go? And that can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I kind of figured you would ask me a question like that, so I sent you another chart that shows the history of October WASDE reports. And I just picked out those years where the yield went down in September compared to August. So we're looking at corn, and out of the last 20 years, how many do we have there? 9 years. 10 years. 10 out of the last 20, we had corn estimate yields. The yields went down from August to September. So then, okay, I just picked out those years and said, okay, what then happened to the October estimate compared to September? And so what I did, I kind of color-coded it there. The numbers that our viewers can see in black is where it didn't change at all. In red is where the yield went down. And in green are a couple of years where it actually went up in October, even though all 10 of the years are down for the month of September. Now, what that tells us, under the key observations there, the important points I want to make is that the October yield rose from September just as often as it declined. And the average increase on the years that it went up was 1.5 bushels per acre. Now, the average decline in the years when it went down was just 0.6 bushels per acre. So if it does go up, what history tells us is that it's likely to go up a little bit more than expected. And if it goes down, probably down a little less than expected by those who think it's going to go down. Now, I also pointed out that in just the past 3 years, October yields declined further in 2 of them and rose just a fraction in the third. So our whole thing is about what can we learn from history? Our most recent history tells me is that Thursday's report is more likely to show a decline, even though the 10-year history is it's even Steven. The last 3 years tells me it's more likely to show a decline in the average corn yield. And so that's what I think it's going to show.
Let's switch to soybean now that
Okay.
we've done the corn. Is that going to be any positive, do you think?
Well, if we look at the soybean situation, it's a little bit similar. Let's look first at what the USDA September estimate was 50.1 bushels to the acre. Now, remember, what years are we looking at here? When I get to that slide a little bit later, I'm just going to be looking at the same years when the corn yield went down to see what the October WASDE would say. I'm using those same years to see what October soybean yield might do compared to September. So if we look at the history here, the September estimate was 50.1 bushels to the acre. The average trade guesstimate, I call it a guesstimate, for Thursday is 49.9. So on average, they see soybean yield coming down. But look again at the range of those estimates from 49.0 to 50.6. And the R.J. O'Brien estimate is 49.5. So unlike corn, where R.J. O'Brien thinks the corn yield might tick up a little bit, R.J. O'Brien thinks the soybean yield might actually go down. And in fact, they think it might go down more than the average trade guesstimate at 49.9. One thing I'd like to observe about this, if you look at just the trend in that green line, the trend over the last 10 years is more sideways than up. We keep talking about the trend line yield just keeps going up and up and up because of better management and better hybrids and all of that. But for the last 10 years, if you look at that zigzag green line, it's really more sideways than up. In fact, in the last 10 years, 7 yields have been above trend, but in the 3 years that were below trend were just in the past 5 years. So what that tells me again as a student, what's history trying to tell us here? For one thing, it's telling us that trend line yields in soybeans are kind of flattening out and not, they're defying the historical odds. Well, trend lines just, they never do anything but go up. They've been kind of flattening out over the last 10 years. And that tells me that there's a showing, at the very least, there's a decline in the rate of increase in the trend line yields for soybeans.
So let's kind of talk about the history.
Okay.
And how that kind of looks.
Well, once again, it's important for our viewers to realize that what are these 10 years that I'm displaying here? These are the same 10 years where corn yields went down from August to September. I'm just saying, okay, what happened to soybeans? Now, why did I do it that way? Why didn't I just say, well, just go back and try to find all the years where soybeans yields went down? I did. And actually, there weren't any years where the corn yield went down, but the soybean yields went up. And so it made sense. And agronomically, that makes sense because August is the critical month for soybean yield, where July is like the critical month for corn yields. And so it just made sense to me that if the corn yield declined from August to September, it probably meant that August was kind of a rough month for soybeans too. And so what we find here is that, again, under the key observations on this, the October yield fell further in 5 of the 9 years. It rose in only 3 of those years. So it was in sync with corn in 5 out of the 9. The average increase was 1.53 bushels per acre, and the average decline was 0.6. So it was a very similar in the case of corn. The years where the soybean yield went up, it was went up a little bit more than was expected, but the years when it went down just a little bit. But again, similar to corn, if we forget about looking at the past 10 years. In the last 3 years, the October yields declined further in 2 of them. And there was no change at all in the third year. It was unchanged from the September report. So once again, what history is telling me is that the odds favor a decline in the soybean yield on Thursday. That's what history is saying. Now, I have to add, our viewers probably know that we've been asking for people to send in their own early harvest results for like the last 3 or 4 weeks. And a lot of them have been really, really good about that. And just anecdotally, what we have found reading the actual early yield responses is that for our clients, they have more of them found their corn yields disappointing compared to their expectations or compared to their APH yields than in soybeans. Soybeans was mixed as well. But in soybeans, it just, if we went over just the people who sent in their results, there were more of them who were pleasantly surprised in their yields compared to expectations. But again, that gets kind of subjective because what were their expectations relative to APH? Because a lot of them admitted that they weren't expecting much. The beans just looked kind of tough in August, especially towards the end of the month. And so just to say the soybeans beat my expectations wasn't meaningful unless they also told us how did they compare to your normal yields, regardless of expectations. And we found out that even there, just among those people who responded, which is hardly a scientific survey, more people were pleasantly surprised by their soybean yields than in corn. So again, what I'm balancing here is what history is telling us. I think based on history and the crop condition ratings through the month of August and through the month of September and October, I think Thursday we're going to see yields lower for both corn and soybeans, with corn more likely to be low enough to get a positive market response than in soybeans.
So we've talked about the changes in the corn and the soybean. The ending stocks forecast.
Yeah, that's the all important bottom line because yield and production is only one part of the balance sheet. That's the supply side. There are also some changes expected in the demand side, particularly in the area of crush or exports or corn use for ethanol. And so when we look at what traders are expecting for ending stocks, and that's the most important line of any WASDE report is, okay, the leftover supplies, are they getting bigger or are they getting smaller? What we've got is that for ending stocks in corn, the trade is expecting 2.156 billion bushels. And that's down a bit from September of 2.22 billion. But the range of estimates there is wide as well. The lowest one is down to 1.94 billion, and the highest one is as high as 2.39 billion. So there's room for surprise on the ending stock side as well. In soybeans, the average trade guesstimate is for a soybean carryover to be at 236 million bushels, and that's up a bit from September at 220 million. But the range of those estimates is from as low as 206 to as high as 271. So there's unusually wide ranges in both the yield expectations and the demand expectations, which sets us up for the potential surprise come Thursday. And with history being my guide, if you pin me down to it and say, okay, what's it going to be, bullish, bearish, or neutral? I think it's going to be neutral to price friendly on soybeans. And I think I definitely have a bias towards a friendly yield estimate on corn for Thursday. So that's where I stand right now. Neutral to price friendly on beans. And I'm confident that we're going to get a price friendly number on corn.
Do you think you're going to have any surprises at all?
You mean like big surprises, like
Yeah.
that double-digit moves? No. I don't think there is very low likelihood that the change in yield or the change in ending stocks, let's put it this way, whatever the number is, it's going to be within the range. when you ask me, is there going to be a big surprise? I interpret that as meaning, do you think there's a possibility that it could come in outside even the range of estimates, upside or downside? My answer is no. Whatever we get is going to be within those ranges. But I think my bias is that it's more likely to be in the lower end of the range on corn, on ending stocks. And probably, I think the trade estimate is probably just about right on soybeans on ending stocks.
All right, that'll do it with the wizard today. Thank you so much.
The wizard, oh, I thank you.
For premium content, you can head over to the Comstock Report. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button.